Hello, and welcome to another episode for the Rollwise podcast. My name is Mike, one of your hosts, and based on some feedback we were given before, I've decided to put everybody's names in the corner. So, in case you are watching this show instead of just listening to it, you can actually put a name to a face because yes, we do all have names.
And they may be interchangeable in the future, so you might want to keep watching.
What? Why would they be interchangeable?
So they keep watching.
Oh, okay.
That'll be our April Fool's joke. We'll all switch names.
Yeah, a year from now.
we're setting this up. This is a long-term stuff.
Yeah, this is a long con.
It's a long con.
Yeah, this is one of those ones. Gotcha, 2025. Wasn't really my intent. I was just making it so if people wanted to know who we were, they could at least put a name to a face. So, yeah. So this week we thought we would talk a little bit about a game we're revisiting. So we're revisiting Monster of the Week in our home table. And for those of you that are joining us for the first time, if you do like listening to this kind of discussion, please like, subscribe, comment, tell us what you like to see more of, all of that stuff. But we're actually revisiting Monster of the Week, and we're kind of going at it from the fact that, we did play Monster of the Week a few months ago. Has it been a few months already?
It's been months, yeah.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Time flies so fast. And we thought we would go, since we're going back to the game, we thought we would kind of start I would hate to call this a series, but like we're going to put this under the revisiting of the game category, because now that we're playing it a second, third, whatever time, we're kind of hopefully uncover additional secrets, additional tips, additional tricks, and all that stuff to maybe help you in your Monster of the Week game. Now, as we're still I would say we're pretty amateur at the game. I wouldn't consider us to be masters. There are definitely some really great podcasts out there that have been doing Monster of the Week for a while. The only one that really comes to name right now is the Crit Show. They have a really good Monster of the Week podcast that they've been doing for a very long time. So if you want to see real masters at work, I really recommend you guys go and check them out.
Trying to remember a podcast that I watched where I love, I will remember it later. I'll find it and I'll mention it. But their podcast is what made me want to try Monster
of the Week.
Nice.
Oh, well, maybe one day we also can inspire people to maybe want to try the game. That would be very cool if we could pay it forward like that. But yeah, so we thought we'd give some advice. So as we, as we take back the layers of the onion, so to say, and build our mastery of the system, we're each going to present some advice that we feel is going to be helpful. And then hopefully next week, when we actually get into the meat and potatoes of the game, if we would decide we want to have a debrief on stream, we can definitely do that and all that. You can hear about how these guys had a very different experience than their aliens, Chariot of the Gods. Maybe everyone lived, maybe not. Who knows? We'll see. So yeah.
Well, these are people that can fight monsters, as opposed to the Alien game where we're playing people who can't fight the monsters.
Yeah,
so
we played people who couldn't do anything.
Or I mean, who can fight the monsters, but can't win.
We're lying to everyone and hiding.
When fighting the monsters.
So potato is all I got to say. Potato, tomato. What does that saying go? Something like that.
You say tomato, I say tomato, and then the same with potato.
I thought there was something about potatoes and tomatoes and ketchup, something like that. But needless to say, so we're going to give some advice, at least some tips that maybe we've discovered as we played and as we're rediscovering the game each time. We thought we'd go from there. So I think since I'm the one being the keeper this time around, I was actually going to share a piece of advice that I found. I was always perusing the internet. And so this is probably more of a little bit of a signal boost, but I like the idea of it because if you're not familiar with Monster of the Week as a game in itself, is that first and foremost, it was created by Michael Sands, and they put together a Monster of the Week type game that's similar to watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer or any of those other kind of episodic monster type in the media and all that kind of stuff. They put it in a game form. They built it on the powered by the Apocalypse rule set, so it is very narrative driven, very, very fiction first and all that kind of stuff. Now, the thing about it is, though, is one of the tenets of the game is that really, as the game master or the keeper, as they call it, is that you're not supposed to prepare a whole bunch for the game because you're supposed to allow for improvisation and flexibility for the story to be played rather than the story to be known. And I think as I came from a Dungeons and Dragons background, where you kind of like, oh, I have my module, I know how the players are going to get from point A to point B, because everything is kind of written in the tome. You you don't take that same approach with Monster of the Week, and so I think when you're looking at it from that perspective, that was a difficult change for me. Now, as players and stuff like that, when we played Monster of the Week last time, did you guys feel it was a different feeling to kind of know that the story was kind of being fabricated as it was going, or does it feel the same as other games like that?
No, I think it felt the same. It was organic growth, and just a well-run story, which I think is really the idea. And I mean, I think with our group, there's a lot of modifications you have to make on the fly anyways. So I don't think it's going to be big or small. I think there's just modifications that you have to make in any gaming group. So I think, I didn't feel any different.
Yeah, I didn't notice a lot of difference either. I mean, it definitely didn't feel railroady, kind of like a module would, because most of them are fairly linear. But whether or not, how detailed the scenario was, like you were filling in details. So if you were providing a lot of the extra, good on you, which is what I expect happened. But yeah, I didn't notice a lot of difference. Like it played like a well-paced, well done scenario, and we got from point A to point B effectively.
And we've discussed this a little bit, but I kind of argue against the don't rep at all argument. One, if it's a pre-written scenario, you at least have to read it, and that's like prep time. And sure, it's short prep time, but it's still prep time. And I really think when people say don't prepare if you're GMing a game, they mean don't over prepare.
Yeah.
Is what I think is more the correct statement, because you need to prep stuff anyways. Like you need to kind of decide, NPCs or be aware of the locations, and even pre-written or your own module. And if you're writing your own game, like if you have any idea what the story you want at all, you have to put pen to paper. I mean, but so just don't I think it's more just don't over prepare than don't prepare at all, because GMing is performative and it's creative, and you got to kind of prepare at least mentally. So
yeah, well, and exactly, and I think that's what's interesting about writing a mystery is because I can't say that I mean, there might be some people that are so improvisational that they can create a mystery entirely on the fly. They could just, the monster is they roll some dice and that's the monster, and they're able to weave those types of things together in a way that's cohesive. But I don't, unfortunately, feel that I have that capability as of yet, even though I've DM'd or GM'd or played keeper in these kind of games. And so what I like to do is I like to kind of just have the backdrop in my mind. And so thinking about persons, places, things, thinking about what because they want you to have a monster in it, so know what the monster is, know what the monster's doing, know how the monster kills stuff, just so that when that player rolls their first investigation roll, if you haven't even thought about it once, so this is the first time that you're thinking about how the monster goes about attacking its victims, that you don't want to be put so much on the spot that you run into that, like, oh, I'm not a very good improviser, so now I just fall flat. Well, how did the person die? They died.
Bleeding. There's bleeding. There was lots of bleeding.
And then you're like, wait, was there bleeding? Just a second.
Well, and that's kind of what I mean too. Like, especially in Monster of the Week, where like a person could roll and like know what the monster is. Like, you don't want to be there in a moment where like it's like, oh, they made a roll. Oh, they did good. It's a monster thing.
Yeah.
It's like, well, that's not very helpful.
Exactly. And especially since the game, because of how the dice work and the kind of questions that the players get to ask, you actually get put on the spot about things that I didn't think were, I wasn't used to being put on the spot about, like, I think when we played our first, the one on campus, you guys said, well, what kind of monster is it? And I was like, oh, they can ask that kind of question. So now I have to understand how I could tell you what kind of monster it is and how you could have possibly known that, if there's a way you could have known it, right? There may not be a way you could know it. So I might be able to force you to say, well, how could you possibly identify the monster from this? But those kind of questions can kind of set you on your heels as the GM. And if you're not great at improvising, you haven't even considered it beforehand, it can kind of throw you off your game a little bit. So the technique that I saw, that as I was reading the internet and kind of looking up stuff, is I actually ran into I think it's a blog. Yeah, it looks like it's a blog. That is by Jason Cordova, and it's on brindlewoodbay.com, and it's their blog right there. And they have a good technique called the 731 technique. And Jason basically suggests that he put it together using bits of advice from Vincent Baker's game Dogs in the Vineyard, which I haven't played myself, but I've heard a lot of really good things about. And how it works for him, and how he interrogates his setting to kind of like make sure he's got everything put together in his brain, so that when people start doing stuff in the session, as he comes up with the 7 is for 7 NPCs, locations or encounters. And you give each of them a motivation, because in Monster of the Week, things have motivations and everything like that, as you should in really any game. And I don't think that's unique to Monster of the Week. And then you come up with 3 sensory details about each that you can describe at the table. What kind of sights, smells, sounds, stuff like that you can use to enhance the setting of the scene and everything. And then for him, he thinks of one way he can physically embody each at the table. So something like a distinct noise, voice, verbal tick, body posture, mannerism, etc. And that's kind of a quote from his thing right there. And so I thought that was an interesting way to kind of prepare yourself in your setting, was that he says, even if he doesn't bring these notes to the table, because he's thought through these type of situations prior to the game, when he gets to the game and he has the players at the table and they kind of start being players, he feels better prepared to react to them, even if he doesn't use something specifically out of that prep. He has a way to react to them a little bit more in tune with the fiction, so that you don't create the ultimate problem of, my story doesn't make sense because I ad-libbed something that is
right.
Breaks
there
the
was no
story.
there was no there's no consistency to my ad-libbing. And I guess that's what I mean. So much of the creative process, like writing, is iteration. So like just going through it in your head for 5 minutes or whatever is going to be beneficial anytime you're telling a story. Even if it doesn't go the way that you think, you're still going to have an idea of what you kind of want to showcase as to what's happening. Maybe it's not what you want to happen or what you thought would happen, but it's the idea of how to showcase what's happening, which I think is the goal of doing some prep.
And it was really interesting to me, because like it's so simple to think about it in this regard. And because you attack it from these multiple points, and it's not just 1 or 2 things, you can really drag into the details, like, well, what is this building supposed to look like? And is it, like if you go into a police station, well, what kind of police station? Are they fully staffed? Do they not have staff? Do they fully funded? Are they, what I'm saying? Like, you start asking yourself these questions to just go, oh, well, if they for some reason end up at a police station, I now have some details that not only can I use for this police station, but I can use for police that you may encounter. They may be a little bit haggard because there's not a fully staffed police department. So they really don't have time to be spending on these wild geese chases. Is it geese chase or wild goose chases?
Goose chases.
Especially if they're Canadian geese.
It's a wild goose chase.
Wild Canadian geese chases. Yeah. I like Letterkenny. Canadian geese are a really important part of that show. But yeah, so I thought it was interesting. I feel that technique is really helpful, and I've actually used it for my prep this time around. We'll have to see if it helped enhance my ability to respond to you guys, or not. I mean, maybe it doesn't. It doesn't. Who knows? But don't over prep, though. Don't try to force the story into something it's not supposed to be. I'm not trying to do that. I'm just trying to give myself enough ammunition that when you guys,
I think over
your
prepping
game.
Yeah, I think over prepping is where when railroading comes into play, because you're so focused on this being the story that you want to tell. And that's where railroading comes in. And I don't think that does a service to your players usually. So
and
in any game.
Yeah. Good, yeah.
So, I was just going to say, especially in Monster of the Week, it's so collaborative, and there's going to be a point where the players come up with something off the wall or ask what winds up being a fairly insightful question that nobody could have predicted, or just an uninsightful question that nobody could have predicted, or making a decision to go to a location that's different than what maybe the way the plot is going would seem to dictate. You know what I mean? And since it's a collaborative game, we're all contributing to the thing. The players are just doing so with less information. And I think you need to maintain some flexibility in that. And if you prepared, like Brent said, like a whole detailed plot line around this one NPC that you created, and they're basically ignored other than for the basics of information, it's tough to feel fulfilled.
If you make an interesting NPC and then put a non-interesting NPC in anything, they're not going to pay attention to the NPC that's interesting. They're always going to find the other NPC more interesting.
Why is the uninteresting one so mysterious?
Exactly. Just
why don't they know more? They should know more, don't you think? We should ask them more questions.
I always like that, because it's just like there's something about them, and you're like, no, there's literally nothing about them. Like, there's no details, nothing. Well, isn't that mysterious in itself? Why would that
be strange? The nothing spout sends out that maybe they're a CIA agent. They blend in so well.
Yeah, maybe they're part of a secret cabal.
Exactly. Yeah,
or a clone, and they all look the same. Yeah.
They're all named Tiffany. Yeah. So yeah, I think I do find that, if you like this technique, I hope will be something that I can kind of use in my games to kind of help me on the improvisational side, because I do like running games where it's not like a fixed, like, hey, I know, because obviously in Monster of the Week, you guys are out to get the monster. How you get the monster is kind of up to the story to be told. But it's like, how do you tell the story to be as fun as possible and and flow as well as possible? I think flow in a game is really important. And if you can help yourself as a keeper flow, because you've got some kind of things tucked away so that you don't like go, oh, Mojo lost. I think it's helpful.
Well, I think that's why we role play, is because it's even if you have a story that you want to tell, like there's games where I've made a story and like I knew where I wanted it to go. But the interesting part is seeing how they get there.
Yeah, because it's going to be different every time, right?
Yeah, exactly.
With different groups, especially.
Yep. So, yeah, I'd have to say. So that's my tip. So honestly, recommend if you are playing Monster of the Week and you want to see a little bit more details as to how this person put it into a blog, polished it up, and made it into some pretty good advice. Here it is. Otherwise, we don't really write anything like newsletters or anything like that. But if you guys are interested in us putting thoughts together on paper and sending them out in some capacity, whether it be through social medias or something like that, let us know. We'd be curious. So, Mike, check, done.
Oh wow, there's a checklist now.
Oh, there's always a checklist in this brain.
Yeah, it's just that we don't always get the checks, Jeff. He doesn't tell us that, but there is judging going on. But anyways, one thing I did remember, it's the Nature of My Game podcast was the one that really made me want to try Monster of the Week.
Nice.
They had one season where it was a really good Monster of the Week story, and I feel like it very much hit the beats of an archetypical like Monster of the Week story, which I think is really good to just see how to run a game. But my suggestion is for players, and one of the things that I would suggest is have an idea of maybe what playbook that you want to play, but be ready to change it if it doesn't fit with the party, or somebody else wants to play that. Always have a backup, because Monster of the Week is an interesting game where you can't have duplicates of people, because the archetypes, you are the archetype. It's not like you're like in D&D there could be multiple fighters, but in Monster of the Week there is only one spooky or spooktacular, and that's your character. It's what makes them special. So I would say this is the one game, and I just thought of this is the one game where I'd say where I don't mind people not being able to play the same thing, because it's so reliant on the archetype.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mike.
You go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think it's important because it being more narrative, there are fewer tools that everybody has. And if the tools that you guys all have are coming out of the same bucket, I think it limits what you can do story wise and how you can solve problems.
Well, I mean, that's what people say about D&D too, and needing the perfect party. But in my opinion, the game should say that. It should set that rule.
Yeah.
Which I think Monster of the Week does very well.
Yeah.
There's my shitting on D&D quota for the take a drink.
Oh, geez. No, well, but I think it's
we're still waiting on that 6 first level wizards and seeing how fast we actually die. Just
we had
arrows
or slings. We had the 4 bards, and we seem to do fine.
Is that more because I'm losing my edge in my old age, or you guys
probably.
You definitely have to change the game a little bit if you're.
You could have said, "Oh, you've killed the 15 orcs."
Because again,
that seemed kind of easy. Suddenly, over the hill come 45 more.
Again, the GM can win.
No time for a short rest.
The GM can go, "Oh, I hate this bard's idea. You guys meet a wizard and he kills you all."
It feels kind of unnecessarily mean, though. And I like the idea of a traveling band. I mean, it's just kind of like I kind of like the idea of the concepts in Monster of the Week, where you guys, kind of form a concept as to like, why are you guys together? In this case, you guys are kind of riffing off the traveling family, Monster Hunter family, but going instead with you're a clandestine section of a circus. Is that?
I think it's a perfect cover.
Yeah, I think the Kurt Circus is just cover. We're still that traveling group. I mean, I would assume that if you're interested in playing a game like Monster of the Week, you've watched something like the X-Files or Supernatural or Buffy or Angel, or honestly, it's just like any procedural. If you've watched a cop show procedural or a medical show procedural, you know what I mean? Like, there is a new problem every week. Right?
Well, actually, yeah, and this is actually designed that way. This is actually designed to be an episodic monster. Yeah. That's why it's Monster of the Week. It's exactly like early X-Files episodes. Like, you could easily do an X-Files game where it's the first season, where it's like, oh, it's a fluke monster. Oh, it's the guy that eats people's livers. Like, that would be like an easy Monster of the Week style game.
Yeah, but I mean, we've all seen these things, and if you're really in the know, you've watched Fringe, which might be the greatest Monster of the Week overarching story combination show ever. That's just my opinion.
I mean, technically, Star Trek is a Monster of the Week show.
Oh no, Star Trek's 100%. It's weird for a TV show that was pitched as Wagon Train in Space, right? But it's very much Monster of the Week. That's how a lot of episodic television has been. Mm-hmm. So you're familiar with the story beats because it's comforting, right? Mm-hmm. You have some sort of intro, then you have the introduction of a problem, and it's classic storytelling. Yeah, it's classic storytelling.
It's very classic storytelling. And episodic is easy because you don't have that overall meta plot that you have to beholden yourself to, like which can get really difficult in games and shows where they have that overarching meta plot. One of them that I liked was I can't remember what it's called, so never mind. It'll come to me later.
Does it have something to do with Trek?
It's another sci-fi show. It was the one
Firefly?
Babylon 5.
Babylon 5. Yeah.
Like, that had a big overarching meta plot to the point where, like, you couldn't watch it in season 3. Like, you couldn't watch season 3 without knowing.
You couldn't start there because there are things they keep referencing that you just were like,
not
what?
Know what the hell is going on. Whereas that's the strength of episodic TV, is somebody can like tune into episode 5 of season 3 of Star Trek, and you have a pretty good idea what's going on.
Yeah.
Oh, they're on a spaceship and they have interesting uniforms and there's Klingons. Okay.
Well, and sometimes, you might be able to be like, oh, I missed a reference, but the episode tells the story by itself. It doesn't need a whole bunch of setup for it.
Right.
And then, just as a jab at, what was that show, Night Flyers? Did you watch that one? The one on Sci-Fi?
Watch Night Flyers.
Oh my God. Did the George R. Martin sci-fi show, which was like, I have all these ideas. I'm just going to throw them into this book.
The worst part about it is I was like on episode 2 and I was like, oh, this could be a really good sci-fi show. And then literally by episode 6 or 7, I was like, this is the worst thing I've ever seen.
It had ghosts, aliens, telepaths.
I think there was a fungus involved.
Spaceships, star beacons, a different galaxy. Like it had like every sci-fi thing you could think of in it.
Wow.
And like I was like, the mind boggles at what's going on. It had android people who could like talk to computers. It was like
riggers or people that got jacked in. And stuff.
this is a lot. This is a lot that's going on in the show.
How do you do that in an hour long in a couple of episodes of an hour long program?
Well, and the worst part is I
it's
think
not,
that
it's not coherency. That's what I will tell you. It is not coherency.
Okay.
I do feel like that's one of those things where like if you watch it and you're like, oh man, I bet they could have cleaned up a lot of this if they had a season 2. But I'm like, it's like I don't know if they earned a season 2, like because it was so off the wall.
I don't think they would have. I think it would have gotten weirder if they went to season 2.
I think so.
I think it would have just been a new can of shit that he was trying to like. I want to try this stuff in my new story.
This time they break into the other dimension, and guess what?
Yeah, space dragons. Yeah,
equal idea actually.
Jesus.
that idea would sell. I'm surprised they didn't just start with space dragons.
Well, because the whole tagline, original tagline was like, "It's a haunted ship in space." But
it's full of people.
But it's
less haunting.
Yeah, it wasn't really like it was so not that. Like it was like there's so many other things going on in this.
Yeah, no, it was pretty crazy. Although it does start off with that really impactful first episode where that one person is like chasing that other person around with the axe, and I was like, "Whoa, this is intense!" Like,
there are some episodes that are really good, which is the weird. Oh, it's also non-linear. It starts backwards. It starts at the end and then moves and then flashes back and then moves forward. I forgot that. Like,
yeah.
And then that was the other bad thing about it. It felt like they were trying to fit puzzle pieces into the border, but they were just like smashing them in. They were just like, okay, that'll make sense for what we set up at the beginning.
You guys make it intriguing, but also ultimately, I think I'm not going to watch Night Flyers.
You can watch an episode, and that's probably the most you need. I did watch the whole thing, but yeah.
I'm curious now, like if it had a Rotten Tomatoes score. Not to say that Rotten Tomatoes is everything, but so the Night Flyers, one season, 2018, the average tomato meter gave it a 38, while the audience gave it a much more generous 55.
Ooh, 55. Even the audience
55 is so low for an audience.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that is a turd floating in a punch bowl. So let's just skip Night Flyers.
I think people watched it because Martin's name was on it, and it was not Game of Thrones.
Maybe. I mean, honestly, like if they would have just focused a little bit, I think he would have been a little bit better. Because I enjoyed like some of the actors and actresses in it. Like the guy Angus Sampson, he played Rowan, the guy with the axe. Like he was a fun character the entire time. Like even in the weird episodes, he was a fun character to follow. I don't know, but we kind of got off topic there, which is
we did get off topic, and I just have one other thing to throw in. Like the show was so weird, I couldn't imagine reading the book. Like I was like, I can't imagine the book is any more coherent than this, because this went through like a lot more editing than I'm sure the book did.
Are you sure? I mean. Could you imagine being the editor for this and being like, what am I supposed to do with this? Like,
did they just tell George R.R. Martin? I don't know. He did Game of Thrones. Go for it. Do whatever you want. We don't care. I guess maybe that's what happened.
I had heard he was fighting the producers, like the studio, like the whole time, trying to
for Game of Thrones
to be more faithful. No, Game of Thrones. I think he got a lot. He stepped back a little bit, but they incorporated a lot more stuff. And actually valued his feedback. I think on Night Flyers, they just wanted his name and didn't want him to contribute anything.
Oh, maybe the book is better then.
We'll have to do a little research, and maybe we'll come back and touch on this on a future non-TTRPG
On a
episode.
different rambling episode about Monster of the Week.
Well, every once in a while we have those times where there's not much going on in tabletop RPGs, and so we talk about other pop culture type things that amuse us, like Night Flyers, apparently.
Yeah. So now that we've derailed that on accident, what was your? Did you finish up your tip, Brent, about being flexible
did.
with your characters?
That was my tip.
Okay.
It is time for Jeff's tip.
Yeah, I spent some time thinking about this, and we've now played 2 games, and it's come up twice, and they reinforce it in the rules. So I'm just going to shout it out. You need to remember that you're the hero. Your party are super capable at what they do. They've done this before. They know what they're doing. Because I think that there is a desire sometimes, because I believe I had it the first game, and I think Brent might have as well, and one of our party did just the other night when we were creating characters for our second game, was, oh, but what if I'm a little clueless? What if I'm unaware that this kind of stuff exists? It's not that I don't think that it works. It's that you probably can't take down the monster unless your character is kind of capable. And so I think you have to go into it feeling like you're kind of a badass. Like, you may not win every time, but they're going to know they were in a fight kind of deal, as opposed to, oh, I'm in this alley and this thing came out that I don't know what it is, and now I'm dead.
Well, yeah, I think even the mundane, which is the most milquetoast of the archetypes, is I mean, even they have specific abilities for monster hunt.
Yeah.
So it is important. Remember, you're competent. Like, that is, I think that is, it isn't like other games where your characters may grow to be competent. Like, you kind of start the game as a competent.
Yeah, you may not be at the top of the arc, but you are approaching it.
Mm-hmm.
You are not a level 1 character. You know what I mean? You've got some experiences under your belt, and there's some shit that's happened in your past.
Yeah.
It helps create your character. My sub tip for that is that maybe it's just me, and Brent, you can chime in because you've created characters twice now. But I seem to go in and I have this character archetype, usually from a movie or TV show, in my head that, like, oh, I guess I'm kind of playing, we'll just throw something, Briscoe County Jr., right? Like, that's in my head, the character that I'm playing. And when you start actually playing and you start meshing with your group, I wasn't ever Briscoe County Jr. I was somebody else along a similar vein, or, a little bit of 6 other characters. But I think it helps you start down the path, having a firm grasp on, I think it's this, but know that it's not going to be that. You'll be competent, but it'll be slightly different because of the rules and the abilities that you have.
Yeah.
Your monster fighting toolbox is a little different than whatever movie or TV show or book you're thinking of.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that's cool about Monster of the Week. Like, it does tell you, like, if you read the descriptions, like, it will tell you, like,
it does.
You're like this character, and so I think that's good because it gives you an idea what your character is and can do. But I think you wind up making it your own a lot. Is what winds up changing. Like, it's Jeff's version of Briscoe County Jr., not just Bruce Campbell in a cowboy hat.
I think the narrative focus on somebody that's both competent, you know what I mean? Like, and somebody that you have some history with, whether you've read the book or consumed the TV or movie, gives you an idea of how you'll respond in those situations. Like, it's a really clever thing in the rules that helps you get into being more story driven, because you're comfortable stating what you're going to do when there's not a set list of, you can only do like these 2 or 3 or 4 things, like some other games.
It's a culture set. It's like a shorthand. It's like, it's like Buffy. The chosen one is like Buffy, and it's like, oh, my character is a knowledgeable badass who's good at killing good at killing these monsters, like, and protecting people. Like, and then it gives you a shorthand into what your character is like right off the bat. So you don't need, like, it's the placeholder for that competency. It's like why you don't need levels to build your competency playing the character, because you know what the character is, because it's an iconic thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because you are kind of playing an iconic archetype.
Mhm.
You know, and you are competent. Like, even if you're part of the Scooby Gang in Buffy, right? I wasn't the only one who called them the Scooby Gang, right? Wasn't that
No, I don't think so. I think I've heard that before.
Even if you're part of the Scooby Gang, you've still killed monsters.
Mhm.
You know, you're not the chosen one, but you're one of the chosen one's closely selected, you know, confidants.
Yeah.
That's always there, having their back. You know what
The
I mean?
the mundane characters in Buffy were pretty capable, really, especially
Yeah.
towards the end. Yeah.
Oh yeah, especially towards the end.
No, and I think that's spot on. I think the archetypes that they developed for the game are really quite good at capturing the essence of what each of them should do. Now, not to say that they're going to be 100% perfect, but they have some great tools that, you know, when you make your selections, you can get pretty close, I think, to the archetype in question.
I would say they're perfect for that type of game. Like Monster of the Week is pretty specific. They're not saying they're not telling you they're gonna play a different type of game. Like Monster of the Week is you're gonna play a Monster of the Week game.
Mm-hmm.
You're not gonna play a high fantasy, you know, dungeon delve in Monster of the Week. You're gonna play a Monster of the Week game.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's in the archetypes are Monster of the Week archetypes, and I think so. I'd say they're perfect for doing that. Yeah.
So I think that's pretty much our discussion today on Monster of the Week. Some tips
And
that we
Night
have.
Flyers.
And apparently why you shouldn't watch Night Flyers. I didn't realize it'd be doing that, but whatever.
I think you should watch Night Flyers, just because.
Just so you can experience something.
So you can talk about it because it's worth talking about. I will say that.
Okay.
Sure. Watch Night Flyers, comment on this video, let us know what you thought of it, or if you're a fan of Night Flyers, why do you like the show? Like, what about the show is, you know,
what did we miss? I
haven't
haven't seen it.
What puts you in that 55%, you know?
What did I miss? I would like to know that.
Yeah, like what did we miss on our side? So that's it. So, Jeff, how can people tell us their opinions on Night Flyers or their own tips and tricks about
Monster of the Week? Comment, you know, on the video, or they can look for @Rollwise on Facebook, Threads, Twitter, and YouTube, or they can email us very long, detailed manuscripts at rollwiseguys@gmail.com.
We're gonna get one of those someday, and I'm gonna be so happy.
So, I mean, honestly, I think, well, the problem is that if it ever gets made into something that we have, I think there's problems with that. So, but
well, yeah, no, like if we were actually producing stuff and trying to make money off of things, then yes,
I think he means manifesto, not manuscript.
Manifesto.
I think I used manifesto one of the previous times.
Yeah.
And
tell us why Night Flyers is great.
Yeah,
20 or more pages.
Your manifesto on Night Flyers. That is Night Flyers, the TV show, not to be confused with Night Flyers, the Stephen King movie.
Totally different thing.
That's about vampires that fly airplanes. And it's great. But as always, thank you for being here. We appreciate you listening to both our tips and rambling. And as always, roll well, roll wise, and be safe out there.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.